Welcome, restless souls, to Carmen's Crypt. I'm Carmen Carrion, keeper of forgotten tales and curator of nightmares. You've wandered into my domain, where each week I unearth a fresh horror from the depths of human imagination. In these darkened halls, stories wait like hungry shadows. Each tale we've collected whispers of terrors both ancient and new. From crumbling mansions where something skitters behind the walls, to that strange text message you received at 3 a.m. from a number that shouldn't exist. So gather close. The candles are lit, the shadows grow long, and the witching hour is upon us. Are you prepared to face what lurks in the darkest recesses of Carmen's Crypt? Lock your doors, still your nerves, and remember, here, every fear comes to life. This is Carmen's Crypt. Your sanctuary of scares awaits. Nobody talks about what happened at the lake that summer. Not my uncle, who inherited the cabin. Not my aunt, who refuses to go there anymore. Not my cousin Jake, who was with me when we found the photographs. Not the local sheriff, who filed his report and then told us to stay away from the water after dark. Nobody talks about it, but everybody remembers. It sits in the back of their minds like a splinter that never quite works its way out, festering just beneath the surface of normal conversation. My name is Michael, and I was 19 when I learned that some places hold on to their secrets, like drowning victims hold on to anything that floats. The difference is, drowning victims eventually let go. It started with an invitation that felt more like a rescue mission. I just finished my first year of college, barely, and Uncle Tom's offer to spend June and July at the family cabin seemed like a godsend. A chance to clear my head, he said, to help him fix up the place that had been sitting empty for the better part of a decade. What he didn't mention was why it had been sitting empty. The cabin sat on the northern shore of Lake Miraloma, a deep, spring-fed body of water tucked into the Adirondack Mountains. Uncle Tom had bought it back in the 80s, when he was making good money as a contractor. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Not the clean, mineral scent of mountain lake water, but something organic and stagnant, like wet leaves left to rot. Algae bloom, Uncle Tom explained when I mentioned it. Happens sometimes in the summer. It'll clear up. But I'd seen algae blooms before, and this wasn't that. The water was still crystal clear, just wrong somehow, as if clarity itself could be malevolent. The second thing I noticed was the dock. The wooden planks were warped and split, some missing entirely. The metal posts were corroded, covered in a black substance that looked like tar, but felt greasy to the touch. We spent the first week in a comfortable routine. Mornings for repairs, afternoons fishing from the rocky shore, evenings drinking beer on the porch while watching the sun set over the water. It was during one of these evenings that I first heard the sound. The lake was perfectly still, reflecting the last light of day like a mirror. And then, just as the sun disappeared behind the tree line, I heard it. A splash. Not the random plop of a fish jumping, but something deliberate, rhythmic, like someone swimming with long, measured strokes. You hear that? I asked, leaning forward in my chair. Uncle Tom paused with his beer halfway to his lips. Hear what? The sound came again, moving parallel to the shore, maybe 50 yards out. That sounds like someone swimming. He listened, then shook his head. Probably just a loon. But I'd heard loons before. This was something moving through the water with purpose, with intelligence, with intention. I stood and walked to the edge of the porch. The water was too dark to make out anything beneath the surface, but the splashing continued, moving from east to west, parallel to our shoreline. "There," I said, pointing. "You can see the ripples." Uncle Tom joined me at the railing. The ripples were clearly visible, a V-shaped wake moving steadily across the water. But there was nothing at the point of the V. Nothing visible, anyway. The wake continued for another minute, then stopped abruptly. The lake returned to its mirror-still state as if nothing had happened. The third thing I noticed was the photographs. I found them while cleaning out the cabin's only closet, wedged behind a stack of life jackets. A shoebox full of photographs with that sepia-toned quality of images from the 1940s or 50s. Most were typical vacation shots, families posed in front of the cabin, children playing on the beach. But there was something unsettling about them. Maybe it was the way everyone's smiles seemed forced, or the way they all stood a little too far from the water's edge. And then I found the ones that made my blood go cold. They were at the bottom of the box. 3 photographs, each showing the same scene from a slightly different angle. The dock, but in its prime. New wood, fresh paint, solid metal posts, and a girl. She couldn't have been more than 12 or 13, with dark hair and pale skin. She was standing at the end of the dock, looking out over the water. In the first photograph, she was alone. In the second, she appeared to be waving at something in the lake. In the third photograph, she was gone. The dock was empty, the water around it disturbed, as if something had just broken the surface. "Uncle Tom," I called, carrying the box out to the porch. "I found these in the closet. Do you know anything about them?" He looked up from the carburetor he was cleaning and took the box. His expression changed as he flipped through the photographs, settling into something between surprise and discomfort. I meant to throw them out. "What about the girl? The ones at the end there?" Uncle Tom's expression tightened. "What about her?" "She disappears. Look." I showed him the sequence. She's there, then she's gone. What happened to her? He handed the box back without looking at the photographs again. "I don't know. Probably just a kid playing in the water. Maybe she jumped in between shots." But something in his tone told me he knew more than he was saying. That night I couldn't sleep. The photographs sat on the dresser next to my bed, and I found myself getting up repeatedly to look at them again. In the background of the second photograph, just visible at the edge of the frame, was another figure, an adult, standing among the trees at the shoreline, watching. The next morning, I decided to ask around. There was a small general store about 5 miles down the mountain, where locals gathered to gossip. If anyone knew the history of the lake, it would be the people there. The proprietor was named Earl, and he had the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd seen plenty and forgotten nothing. "You're staying at the Brennan place," he said when I introduced myself. It wasn't a question. I bought a few things and tried to work the conversation around the lake's history. Earl was friendly enough, but I could tell he was measuring his words carefully. "Been a lot of families come and go up there," he said finally. "Lake's been good to some, not so good to others." "What do you mean?" He studied me. "You seem like a sensible kid, so I'll give you some advice. Don't go swimming in that lake, especially not at night." "Why not?" "Just don't. Water's deep and the bottom's all rocks and fallen trees. Easy to get turned around down there. Easy to get lost." As I was leaving, he called out to me, "You find anything strange up there, you bring it to me. Don't go trying to handle it yourself." That evening I sat on the porch with the photographs spread out beside me. The sun was setting, and the lake was beginning to take on that mirror-like quality that made everything look peaceful and perfect. And then I heard it again, the splashing. This time, I was ready. I grabbed a flashlight and walked down to the water's edge, following the sound. But as I approached, the splashing stopped. I waited, scanning the water with the flashlight beam. Nothing. Just the gentle lapping of tiny waves against the shore. Then I saw her. She was standing waist deep in the water, maybe 30 yards out. A girl with dark hair and pale skin, wearing what looked like a white dress. She was perfectly still, facing the shore, facing me. I called out, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" She didn't respond, didn't move, just stood there in the water, watching me. I called out again, louder. Still nothing. But as I watched, she began to move. Not toward the shore, but deeper into the lake. The water rose from her waist to her chest, to her shoulders. And then she was gone, disappearing beneath the surface without a sound. I waited for her to resurface, flashlight beam sweeping across the water, but she never came up. I ran back to the cabin, heart pounding. Uncle Tom was inside, reading by the fire. "There's someone in the lake," I said, breathless. "A girl. She went under and didn't come up." He looked up from his book, and I saw something flash across his face. Recognition? Fear? "What did you see?" I described the girl, her dress, the way she had disappeared beneath the surface. As I talked, Uncle Tom's expression grew more troubled. "We need to call the sheriff," I said. "She could be drowning." "No." His voice was sharp. "We don't need to call anyone." "What do you mean? Someone could be—" "Nobody's drowning, Michael. Nobody's in danger." "How can you say that? I saw her go under." Uncle Tom closed his book and looked at me directly. "Because she's been down there for 60 years. The words hung in the air like smoke. I stared at him, trying to process what he had just said. The girl in the photographs. Her name was Sarah Whitmore. She drowned in 1963. Fell off the dock during a family vacation. They never found her body. I felt the blood drained from my face. "That's impossible. I just saw her." "I know you did. I've seen her too. Lots of people have over the years. That's why the cabin's been empty. That's why I stopped coming up here." "You're telling me I saw a ghost?" "I'm telling you that some things don't stay buried, especially not in deep water." "This is insane. There has to be a logical explanation." "You want logical? Every family that stayed in this cabin for more than a week has seen her. Most pack up and leave the next day. The ones that don't start talking to her, start thinking they can help her, start believing they can bring her back. And they join her. 3 families in the last 40 years. 7 people total. The sheriff stopped investigating after the 3rd one. Ruled them all accidents." I thought about the figure in the background of the photograph. "You knew about this when you invited me up here. I hoped maybe if there were 2 of us, maybe she'd leave us alone." "So what do we do?" "We leave, first thing in the morning. We pack up and go home." That night, I lay in bed listening to the sounds of the lake. The gentle lapping had taken on a different quality now. It sounded almost like whispers. I must have dozed off because I woke to the sound of my bedroom door opening. Uncle Tom stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the hallway light. "She's calling to me," he said, his voice strange and distant. I sat up, instantly alert. "What?" "She's calling to me. She wants me to come to the water." I jumped out of bed and followed him as he walked toward the front door with slow, deliberate steps. I grabbed his arm as he reached for the handle. "Stop! You're sleepwalking! You need to wake up!" He turned to look at me, and I saw that his eyes were open but empty, vacant. "She's lonely," he said. "She's been alone for so long. She just wants someone to keep her company. Fight it! Whatever you're feeling, fight it!" Why should I fight it? What do I have to go back to? He pulled free and opened the door. The night air rushed in, carrying the smell of stagnant water and something that reminded me of flowers left too long in a vase. He walked down to the water's edge with the same slow pace. At the shoreline, he stopped and stood perfectly still. "I can see her," he said. "She's beautiful. She's standing right there in the water, holding out her hand to me." I looked where he was pointing, but saw nothing, just dark water reflecting the moon. "She's not there, Uncle Tom. There's nothing there. She's there. She's always been there, waiting." He took a step forward into the water, then another. I knew the lake dropped off quickly. "Don't do this, please." "Karen left me," he said, water now at his knees. "She left me 6 months ago. She said I was sick, but I wasn't sick. I was just remembering how it felt to be wanted." He was chest deep now, moving toward deeper water. I had to make a choice. I could let him go, or I could go in after him. I chose to go in. The water was shockingly cold. My muscles seized up, but I forced myself forward, following Uncle Tom's wake. "Come back!" I called out. "Whatever you're seeing, it's not real. She's so beautiful," he said, wonder in his voice. "She's reaching for me." He was swimming now, moving with strong strokes toward the center of the lake. I followed, fighting against the cold and my sodden clothes. That's when I felt something brush against my leg. It was soft and cold, like fabric floating in the water. I kept swimming, but the sensation came again. Something was down there, moving beneath us. The thing in the water brushed against me again, and this time I felt it wrap around my ankle. Not fabric, something else. Something that felt like fingers. I tried to kick free, but the grip tightened. I was being pulled down, away from the surface, away from air. I managed to take a deep breath before going under. Underwater, the lake was a different world. The moonlight filtered down in silver shafts, illuminating things that shouldn't exist. The bottom disappeared into blackness below, and rising from the blackness were shapes that my mind refused to process. Bodies, dozens of them, standing upright in the depths like some grotesque underwater forest. They swayed with the current, their faces turned upward toward the surface they would never reach again. And in the center of them all, floating above the lake bed, was a girl in a white dress. Her dark hair flowed around her like seaweed, and her pale skin seemed to glow. She was looking directly at me, and her eyes were the color of deep water. She was beautiful, just as Uncle Tom had said, but it was a terrible beauty, the kind that promises everything and delivers only death. I tried to swim toward the surface, but the grip on my ankle held fast. More hands reached for me from the depths. The bodies in the underwater forest were moving now, reaching upward with desperate clutching fingers. But I wasn't ready to join them, not yet. I reached down and grabbed the thing holding my ankle. It felt like grabbing a handful of water weeds. But water weeds don't have bones, don't have joints that bend in impossible directions, don't have skin that sloughs off at the touch. I twisted hard and the grip broke. The thing released me with what might have been a shriek. I kicked toward the surface, lungs burning, surrounded by reaching hands that fell just short of grabbing me. I broke through into the blessed air, gasping and choking. Uncle Tom was nowhere to be seen. The lake was calm and still. as if nothing had happened. I swam back to the shore as fast as I could and dragged myself onto the rocky beach. When I finally managed to sit up, I looked back at the water. It was perfectly still, perfectly innocent, just a lake in the mountains, reflecting the moon. But I knew better now. I knew what lived beneath that deceptively calm surface, and I knew that Uncle Tom was down there with them, standing in the underwater forest, waiting for the next visitor to join their eternal vigil. I stayed by the water until dawn, hoping he would resurface, but he never did. When the sun came up, I called the sheriff, told him my uncle had gone for a night swim and never came back. They dragged the lake for 3 days, but never found his body. The official report listed it as a drowning. I sold the cabin that fall. The new owners were a young couple from the city, looking for a weekend retreat. I wanted to warn them, but what could I say? They lasted 6 months before they sold. The family after them made it through one summer. The current owners have been there for 3 years now, but they only use it in the winter, when the lake is frozen over. Smart choice, because the water remembers everything, and some things are too hungry to ever be satisfied. The lake is waiting. It's always waiting. And one day, when I'm old and tired and have nothing left to lose, I might just answer its call. But not today. Not yet. Today I stay far from the water's edge, where the dead can't reach me. At least, that's what I tell myself. And so, dear listeners, we emerge from another dark corner of Carmen's crypt. But remember, the horrors you've heard tonight are merely echoes of the terrors that await in the shadows of your own mind. If you enjoyed your stay in the crypt, why not invite a friend to join us next week? After all, fear is best when shared. Leave a review if you dare, or share your own tales of terror on my social media. Who knows, your nightmares might just become my next story. Until next time, keep checking under your bed. And remember, in Carmen's crypt, every fear comes alive, and no one is truly safe. Sweet dreams, if you can still sleep at all.